we are human beings that are easily manipulated if the right input is constantly in front of us. And so AI has the opportunity to learn what those inputs are and just go at it and evolve and get better. And so the opportunity to tear this society apart on that front that we're already starting to see inklings of today is there. Like anything in this world, for one thing to exist, the complete opposite has to exist.
Yeah.
While there are young people that are waking up more aware, there's another side of the extreme where there's every day more and more kids that are getting more lost and absorbed by the technologies, becoming robotic in some regards. How can we combat that? It has to start with the family, and the family needs to establish a culture around it. Without that, impossible.
This is the Human Future Podcast, where we explore the intersection of technology and spirituality with some of the world's brightest minds. Together, we paint a vision of the desirable future and discuss the actionable steps to make that vision a reality. And now, without further ado, let's begin. Today's guest is Jonathan Hermida, a mentor, leadership coach, serial entrepreneur, and CEO of a company that we co-founded together called Capsule, where we create legacy videos for your loved ones to preserve their memory, their wisdom, for future generations to appreciate. During our conversation, we talked about how technology can serve as a tool for creativity and connection, also acknowledging the ethical concerns that technology can pose. Jonathan also shares his thoughts about psychological impact of technology on society and the importance of setting boundaries with the technology that we use. Enjoy the show. So man, every conversation I start with welcome, and that's where James, who you know, knows where to cut the beginning of the the beginning part is not.
You already said welcome, so now he's going to get confused.
Well, no, this is now part of the experience.
Oh, okay. Great.
Yeah. Just for the listeners to also give a little bit of a back. Behind the scenes, that I usually start the dialogue a little bit earlier, and then the actual conversation starts with the welcome. This is the second time I'm mentioning it, so
wonderful.
Thank you, brother, for being here, part of this experiment. You're not new to this space. You've been here, in fact, more than anyone else. Just because, again, to give people reference, Jonathan is a co-founder of this other company that we co-founded together called Capsule. Where we interview your loved ones to preserve their memories, their wisdom, their legacy for future generations to appreciate. And so we've been doing this work together, and it's been great having you as a business partner, as a friend, and just learning a lot from you, from your leadership skills, from the way you carry yourself. I can tell that you've done a lot of work of your own, and it's great to be in your presence.
Thank you, brother. What a beautiful introduction, and what a gift to be sitting across from you. We were talking offline how we haven't sat across from each other in this space in a long time, even though we've been at this for almost 3 years, and it's awesome. It's great. It feels back at home.
Totally, brother. Yeah. So the way I like to start each conversation is to give the listeners a little bit of a background of who is in front of me, to maybe give me a short version of your story. How did you end up where you are now? Or some of the important milestones that define your trajectory of some of the work that you're pursuing now.
Yeah. I'm going to give a very quick version of my story that's relevant.
Yes.
So I grew up in Miami, and I lived a pretty typical Miami life for a young guy. Going out, drinking, all those different things. There were a lot of traumatic situations that I experienced growing up, coming from a sort of traumatic family household. And that led me to pursue those things as a remedy, the only remedy that I knew to fill the holes that I was feeling inside.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, as will happen eventually, that all blew up in my face after a series of sort of incidences that happened, and it sent me on a journey of self-discovery. It started with therapy, it continued with books, it furthered with meditation, and then I traveled the world. I went backpacking through South America, lived in South Korea for a couple years, And that's where I discovered the profession of coaching. I had no idea that it existed. This was in 2011, and I got certified as a coach at that time. And actually, when I was there getting certified, this was all virtually while I was living in South Korea. I met my mentor Leon Vanderpool, who was a trainer at that same school, and he was just founding his organization called the Center for Transformational Coaching, which is an advanced coach training organization that basically trains coaches to support the transformation that's happening within others. And so I became a mentee of his, and I started working at the center, and then my coaching journey sort of took off. And I started coaching in a bunch of different contexts. I ran international retreats. I ran a bunch of workshops and did seminars for big companies. I started coaching, CEOs, startup founders, and all sorts of people from all walks of life. In that process, a good friend of mine came up to me in I think it was 18, and asked me if I wanted to run a retreat with him for his group of friends in Silicon Valley. I said, sure. I had been running a couple of retreats already, and I said, that sounds like a great idea. And so we ran the first retreat for a group of really high-performing men over there called Kings Only. That was the name of the retreat. And it got a lot of traction. So we ran a second one, and then a third one. And then women in our circles were asking for these retreats too. So we started running some Queens Only retreats. We ended up running 6 retreats in 5 months, which was quite intensive.
Wow.
And amazing and incredible. And we're like, wow, we really have something amazing here. Now, it's wonderful to have these transformative spaces that we're providing for these people. But what happens when they go to their day-to-day lives? They relapse into their old ways of being. And so we decided to create a platform for that integration, kind of like a virtual gym where you go to sort of work out and in a group fitness class kind of situation. We were creating a group fitness class for the mind and for the soul. And that's what we were building. And then sort of, I'd never thought of myself as an entrepreneur, but that's sort of where the entrepreneurial bugs sort of hit. Built that out for 4 years, and then transitioned into Capsule, which is, where you and I came to be. We actually met, I think it was during, I remember going to the studio, I think it was during COVID. It was in 2020. And that's when you showed me the space, the sort of video studio that you were sort of imagining still at that time.
Did you need, I forget, did we take some headshots and then I showed you the space?
We took a headshot. Yeah. I think you had offered it as part of Miami Made. I came to the studio. You still hadn't built out that other room. It was kind of still in your mind. And that stayed with me. That stayed with me so much so that 2 years later, when I had the idea for Capsule, I reached out to you and I was like, hey, tell me more about the studio. And that's when we started talking, and we found out we live 5 minutes away from each other. Went on many walks through Coral Gables, and our friendship flourished and business partnership flourished from there.
Amazing. Yeah. I think Capsule would be also a good a place to like stop and explore a little bit more of the type of problem we're solving, how we're seeing the evolution of preserving memories and using technology, maybe using human element. 'Cause, the whole theme for the podcast is human future, and I think this is a good lens for us to look at it through, and then we'll venture into the other topics that I think will also be important to talk about. So tell me the original idea. How did that come about? And then so we'll start there. How did the original idea for you come about? Because when you did reach me, I've also had a similar idea that I haven't acted on, and we've talked about many times, where I knew that there's something there. I didn't have as much emotional, maybe personal charge to the cause, and that's why I was still in the exploratory phase, trying to see what's out there, what other things that we can do with this type of setup. Tell me about your side. How did that come about? Why this emotional drive, creating something like that was so important for you?
Yeah, I mean, I was patient zero. My mom had passed away from cancer 7 years prior. And then my son was born. At that point, it was a year prior. Maybe a couple months after I had the idea. He was a couple months old after I had the idea, and so just the thought that my son will never get to know my mom, see her face, hear her voice, know what she was like from her point of view,
Hmm.
that really struck me. And that blended with another idea I had based off another sort of coaching workshop opportunity that I had. And I was like, hey, imagine if we can capture this person's life before proactively in such a way that we have it forever. I was like,
Hmm.
oh my God, if I would have this of my mom right now, this would be the most incredible thing. And I can look back on it and hear, her stories again and sort of learn from her life. And I
Hmm.
was like, man, if that's something that I want, I know this is something other people want because I would love this for everybody in my life. I would love to hear that story, kind of how we have a podcast of, perhaps more, famous or accomplished people. Imagine having that of your own family. We're the only ones that are interested in their stories, but yeah, that's why it's a personal story.
For sure.
And so that's where that came from, and so then I started having conversations with different people, my own family who had, several good people to interview
Hmm.
as options.
Hmm.
And we started prototyping and taking it from there and building out what this would look like. And
Yeah.
then just launching, that's
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
you got to just launch and see.
To
Yeah.
see what happens. Yeah. Uh, One thing that often people don't really appreciate or recognize. So most of the memories that are passed through generations, those stories that your grandparents would tell you, we're relying on your memory. We're relying on how well you can conceptualize some information that's being, and we're transmitting that information through air, just using some sound noises, and then the other person receives them. And then over time, the fidelity of this signal, if you will, if you like put it into like digital terms, degrades. Basically, it's like a broken phone, right? Like one person shared the story, you're like, "Oh, this is a great story," and then a year later, you just remember 10% of it, and then, you tell your kids about that, and basically you remember pretty much nothing by the second pass,
Yeah.
and only I would say this was a privilege to only very wealthy individuals to be remembered in such details because, maybe like historians would write about them or they would have a internal, I don't know, where basically an ability to capture those stories in a more sophisticated way where they were like written or printed or something like that. Most people didn't have that luxury. And then even now, which is very interesting, that even now us all having cell phones and other digital devices to capture the videos and the things, but we still don't do it. We don't necessarily put our phone next to us talking to our grandma or our grandfather, right? And then capture the whole experience. Usually we use that for just taking a quick little photo. And I mean, that's definitely better than no photo at all and no stories at all, but we can go so much further with the current technology tools that we have to really preserve the legacy that our grandparents left behind.
Yeah. I mean, so much is lost even in the retelling of a story, like you're saying, the
Yeah.
fidelity, as you mentioned. My dad's telling of his own parents. I got to meet my grandmother. I didn't get to meet my grandfather on that side.
Mm.
And I would love to learn their story, but my dad doesn't. My dad kind of just tells the story from his point of view, which is
Right.
one very limited point of view of who these people were, but
Hmm.
not the actual lived experience of their struggles and their hardships and their goals and dreams and ambitions and what it was like when they were my age now or younger.
Hmm.
As one ages, one has a different perspective and relationship to their loved ones
Hmm.
because you start to see, yeah, they were, my mom, when she had me, she was 24. I'm 37 now. It's
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
she was a little girl, and so
Yeah.
you start to relate to those moments differently and the choices that she made and the choices that my dad made. And, it really helps not just to understand yourself, but to also grow in empathy and understanding for
Hmm.
those that you love,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Which has great healing potentials.
Yeah, speaking of the healing potential, the more we know about our ancestors, the almost like on the faster track we are for to heal ourselves because we're more aware. Uh, it's oftentimes like some kind of generational trauma or a certain type of behavior. It's not really passed through genes per se. It's passed through upbringing knowledge and like the way we teach our kids how to live our lives. And if we're not fully aware where it comes from, we just take it as given and we just pass it over to our kids until um, either ourselves or our kids recognize, oh, this idea, this way of doing things is not serving me. It's a maybe some kind of altered or misbelief that's not actually rooted in truth. And you redefine that and you transcend it and you don't pass that limiting belief or limited knowledge to your future generations.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the first step in any healing and any growth is self-awareness, right? And so what you grow in when you hear added context for your own life, uh, whether it's the stories of others or your own insight for your own life, is you grow in that self-awareness. So now you're able to pinpoint and understand why things are the way that they are, why they were the way they
Hmm.
were, why you show up the way you show up. And now in having that understanding, you can now change your relationship to it. And in changing your relationship to it, that's
Hmm.
what is called healing. Heal
Hmm.
that pattern.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I started looking at your relationship with finances in a similar way. It's a healing process where, let's say, I'll speak from my own example. Growing up, as far generations back as I know, there was no one around who was well off. Everyone was like a peasant, like a very uh, low skill type. Like there was no money in my lineage, probably for a reason that there was almost some kind of karmic trait there that until you recognize and become aware of your financial patterns, of your uh, financial flows, no one taught. I mean, I understand that financial education, maybe it's not common in general, but in my case, that was almost like a taboo. Like no one really in my family spoke about like education, financial education, or how to direct finances and things like that. And then now that I'm living a much more conscious life, I'm taking it as a also a healing process. Like I'm healing that part of me that is aware about money is like an energy flow, and not being aware where your energy is being distributed. You're losing, like you're acting suboptimally, basically, and there's room for improvement there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And how does that influence, or how has that influenced, or how do you relate to healing, right? It came from the concept of healing that was just brought up. And how
Yeah.
are you bridging that gap here now?
Yeah, the healing, what you mentioned about the healing comes from awareness. You first becoming aware that there is a problem, and then you address it by basically understanding what's a more optimal way of showing up or putting how to, distribute your energy, uh, whether it's your emotions or whether it's your physical resources. There is a maybe like a desirable, optimal way of managing those types of resources. That was kind of the
Yeah.
perspective that I took. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Awareness starts with that. And then you can now do something about it and
Yeah.
bridge the gaps that were not given to you.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So bridging the gaps now. So speaking about the legacy and the future. So how do you see the future of preserving memories, legacy? Um, would that be still important in the future? Do you think, or will it be even more important in the future? Talk me through the way you think about what to expect around this like area.
Well, we've never lived in a time where more has been recorded of each of us than we do now, right? We can
Yes.
make a mini movie already based off just the photos and videos we have in our
Yes.
phones,
Oh.
as such. There's no narrative per se, but you can kind of like craft one. Um, and so it's just becoming easier to
Mm-hmm.
record those things and to capture those moments. And so that's that in that sense beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're gonna get to places where we can more readily and more easily share it's happening. Think about podcasts and all these different things. That's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
the movement that we're heading in as a society. It's
Mm-hmm.
making it easier and easier to record things,
Yes.
preserve things,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
so that's going to continue to evolve.
Yes.
And then imagine, we're heading into a world of AR and VR, right?
Mm-hmm.
Virtual reality and augmented reality,
Mm-hmm.
where we can be in a room sitting across from somebody who is no longer here in flesh and bone,
Mm-hmm.
but whom you can still be in presence with.
Right.
And the implications of that are incredible,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, on the positive and negative side. There's a scene, random reference, but
Yeah.
there's a scene in the first Harry Potter movie where he discovers this magic mirror in a room.
Mm-hmm.
And what the magic mirror shows you is the
Mm-hmm.
thing that you most desire and covet.
Okay.
And since he's an orphan, what he most desires and covets is his parents and to see his parents. And so
Mm-hmm.
he would spend hours and hours just sitting in front of this mirror because he would see his parents all the
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the double-edged sword of being in a virtual reality room of somebody that's not here, is that you end up sort of just there with somebody who's not there,
Yes.
and you miss the relationships that are here. So anyways,
Yes.
that's
Yes. Yes.
an additional
Yeah.
point to this.
Right. What do you think is the delta between a fully simulated virtual experience that completely mimics all of your, basically, it tricks all of your senses. You can't tell the difference visually, uh, auditory, smell, like all of your senses cannot tell the difference whether it's a simulation or if it's a real one. Um, so take that virtual experience and then a real one. What do you think, if there is any, a delta, a difference that we might be able to pick up on?
In interacting with a quote unquote human in
Mm-hmm.
that situation,
Mm-hmm.
I think the nuance of authentic relating, that you kind of have a conversation with someone and you kind of feel something feels a little off. I don't know what it is, but something feels a little off about this person.
Yeah.
I think that's the feeling that we're likely going to have
Mm-hmm.
with that sort of virtual interaction.
Yep.
Yeah, because real authentic human interaction is nuanced, and there's a lot of
Mhm.
tiny little micro things that are involved in
Yeah.
humans interacting and communicating and
Yeah.
understanding each other. And so that's the part that I would doubt would feel
Right.
100% accurate
Sure.
in my lifetime.
Yeah. Uh, I thought deeply about this question, and I have a theory that's not necessarily backed up by
Mhm.
any. I don't have any data to back it up just yet. But I have a theory that we will start noticing the difference of the, basically, this atrophied sense that we almost like this. What is it? Seventh, sixth sense? What is it called? Like the sense that's more like ethereal, something that your um, like perception of like telepathy or something, those types of qualities that are not mapped
Mm.
to the senses that we already
Mhm.
have, but humans been talking about that we have those skills. It's just we don't use them. We haven't really, we basically over time atrophied them just because we have like this, the way society was formed. It didn't really need or even prohibit those types of witchy skill, or like witchy abilities, right? And so maybe that's the delta we will start noticing and picking up on, like, oh, there's something extra there, and what is it, and start exploring more into those extra abilities that we've always had but
Mm.
we've forgotten.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we're going to discover a whole lot about ourselves as a species moving
Hmm.
forward in the next coming decades.
Hmm. Yeah, and then we've brainstormed a lot about how do you preserve the, yes, you can capture, but then creating a bank of memories or like a collective hive mind or of those. Uh, can you share a bit more with the listeners or whoever is watching the types of ideas that we've kind of explored with you?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, imagine a space where, you're going through something difficult in your life and your mom or your dad or your grandma or grandpa isn't here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go into this bank and ask them a question that they've already pre-recorded or that, somehow
Mm-hmm.
gets generated, and you get their advice, spoken to you on video, the thing that you need most in that moment, that consolation that you need,
Mm-hmm.
or they answer the question that you're asking, right? Kind of like a Google, but for your own loved one.
Right. Right.
Just that concept is fascinating in many ways.
Sure. Yeah, and that's an example how to use technology in a constructive way that promotes humanness. It's bringing us closer together, and I'm all about really finding all of those types of use cases. How do we utilize technology to make us more human and not less human, less like robots and more like humans? And yeah, in my view, the most advanced technology is the one that's least noticeable, that brings out more of our true essence, that is more grounded in the spirit and not even in the physical flesh. Yeah, so it's important for us to discover those methods and really practice bringing out your essence in this world. Yeah. I think I'd like to also, so you are a father, a parent. That's also a unique experience to talk about. Myself, Monica and I don't have any kids yet, but it's, something that we desire. We definitely would love to have kids. And um, I also spend a decent amount of time thinking about what would the future look like around parenthood, around relationship in your family, how you bring up your kids. How do you think about the future when it comes down to those topics?
Well, also in terms of the future, as it's unfolding with AI and VR and AR, like just the implications
Yeah.
of the world my son and future kids are going to step into. Um, I wouldn't say what I lead with is concern.
Mm-hmm.
What I lead with is curiosity about how all of us as a society are going to handle that, how my wife and I as parents are going to handle that, and then our children, how they as individuals are going to handle that, right? We are seeing right now the mental health impacts of the Web 2, the impacts of Web 2 on the minds of youth, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
seeing that in
Mm-hmm.
suicide rates. We're seeing that in school bullying. So like
Yeah.
all the social media stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is that version in the Web 3 for for my son and all this generation that's
Mm-hmm.
coming up, right? So parenting in this world is an interesting um opportunity in many ways. And a thought that I was having recently related to this is, if you notice, never before have kids been more uh, aware and um, awake. It's incredible to talk to a young person.
Mm-hmm.
You see that they're connecting dots in ways that
Yeah,
I don't remember doing. I felt
for
like a
sure.
little caveman compared to even how my son is processing the world. And so my theory is that kids these days are being born at a much higher level of awareness
Mm-hmm.
to offset and combat
Mm-hmm.
the increase in technology that is going
Mm-hmm.
to take over, and the complexity rather of the world in every possible way. Not, technology is a major component of it, but we're
Mm-hmm.
entering into an ever more complicated world. And at the same time, the youth is ever more awake and aware from an early age.
Mm-hmm.
And coupled with that, their parents, our generation,
Mm.
let's call them millennials around there,
Yeah.
and obviously there's generations before and after, but I think we have, generally speaking, gone through a process of introspection and personal growth. I mean, we see that with the movement in meditation and
Mm-hmm.
people getting into yoga,
Yeah.
therapy becoming a normal thing, coaching becoming mainstream.
Right.
All of these modalities that have helped people to wake up themselves, to heal
Yeah.
themselves, to navigate their own life, so that they now are parenting rather, in a way that they never were parented,
Mm-hmm.
because our parents didn't have
Mm-hmm.
the information or the outlets that we now have,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think we're arming ourselves as a whole with the right set of tools, and this is my optimistic lens on all
Mm-hmm.
of this, right set of tools and resources
Mm-hmm.
to help all of us navigate this moment in time,
Yeah.
especially our children.
The way I see, what I've heard you say, that the kids have more awareness. It's a natural process of almost like combating the evolutionary uh, progress, or it's not even evolutionary progress. It's the set of challenges that humans are presented, maybe that are partially or majorly caused by technological evolution. Uh, is that kind of how you see it?
Yeah, and and
Yeah.
and like anything in this world, for one thing to exist, the complete opposite has to exist.
Yeah.
While there are X amount of young people, good amount,
Yeah.
that are waking up more aware,
Mm-hmm.
there's another side of the extreme where there's
Mm,
every day more and more kids that are getting more lost
mm,
and absorbed
mm,
by the technology. So becoming less aware,
mm,
becoming sort of more robotic in some
mm.
regards. And so both
More
polarities,
asleep,
both
would you say?
more asleep,
Yeah.
right? And so both of these are existing side by side.
Mm,
And I would say that is life. Life is a paradox. We live in
mm,
paradoxes,
mm.
and that's one of them that I see.
Yeah. Yeah, I would like to see the actual numbers of it does um like intuitively tells me that I agree with what you said about there's more there's more gap between aware and less aware, it sounds like, because yeah, there's a mindless scrolling, and then there are those who are really dialed in on what's good and what's not good for you, and they're a lot more discerning of what they consume as media or something like that.
Yeah. My concern, a little bit for society, is
Mm,
that potentially the ones that are going to be more protected from technology and all of these harmful effects are people with families with greater means, potentially.
mm-hmm.
And the ones that, so that the gap is not just an income gap that is going to increase, but a consciousness gap
Right.
that can potentially increase. And that is something that we need to look at as a whole, as a
Mm-hmm.
society, and see how we can create more awareness
Mm-hmm.
around this topic.
Mm-hmm.
Arm parents with the right tools and resources to communicate with their kids and set the
Yeah.
right boundaries with their kids,
Right.
and also create environments in school and other environments for kids to be screen free and go back into their essence,
Right.
so that they can tap into that blossoming awareness that I think is happening
Right.
as a whole.
Right. Yeah, I think it's important to define what the boundary is, and make sure not to go over that boundary of how we interact with technology. And so that brings to the question, how do you set or as a family, how do you guys set the boundary of what's allowed in the technological sense for your child? What do you, maybe right now or in the future, as he develops, what would you want um, to allow and what not to allow?
Yeah. The most difficult part of this
Yeah.
for us and for any family,
Mm,
I would imagine, is the fact that phones are just so needed. They're my
Right.
wife and I are both entrepreneurs. We both
Right.
work from home, so we're constantly using our phones. And so
Mm.
to say you cannot use this thing that we're always on
Yeah.
is going to be a difficult thing to navigate, right? And so as a
Mm-hmm.
family, we have to set the right boundaries, and really make sort of put the stake in the ground and say, hey, during dinner time at the dinner table,
Mm-hmm.
at night, certain times, this is not, nobody is going to use
Mm-hmm.
any of these devices.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we use these devices, and we can kind of set the parameters. So my
Yeah.
son is about to be 3.
Yeah.
He's still young.
Time flies though, man. That's
Time
great.
flies. Time flies.
Wow. 3 years.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's wild. And so, his access to this stuff, we use it as a tool at the
Yeah.
moment. And so again, we work at the moment, we don't have a nanny or any help. So we both
Mm-hmm.
work from home, and we're both entrepreneurs. So
Mm-hmm.
um, most of the time he's out playing or playing in the room, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we both have calls. And one of the and what I'm happy with is that this tool is one that gets him closer to his grandfather, who lives at home too. So
Mm-hmm.
he goes and watches Mickey. Mickey's kind of like a overall sort of pointing to just like TV and cartoons, because it's
Mm-hmm.
sometimes Mickey, it's sometimes other things.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
he goes with abuelo, with his grandfather, and he
Mm-hmm.
sits there and watches some TV,
Mm-hmm.
and then every now and again pulling out the phone. When he, we the other day it was raining and we decided to watch a movie as a family, things like that. So kind of
Mm-hmm.
picking and choosing our spots. Now, we don't have number 2 yet.
Yes.
I know that with every additional child, it's going to get more and more difficult, not
Mm.
just because they're going to see the phone, they're going to get older and all those things, but
Yeah.
also it is a sort of tactic to, like, to keep them busy,
Yeah.
while we're
Yeah.
doing other things and getting things done. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's a moving target. And
Mm-hmm.
every family is dealing with it differently. I think setting parameters around family time
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that there's even a whole day, that this is something that I absolutely want to implement, a whole day
Mm.
where no one is on any phone. Sundays are a perfect example of that kind
Yeah.
of day.
Right.
But there has to be some sort of joint um, front on this. It can't
Mm-hmm.
just be, us telling them no and then doing the opposite.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We all have to be on the same page as a family, and really create environments and fun around just, yeah, being outside and playing and
For sure.
riding bike and getting dirty.
What would you say is your ideal case scenario of the family? So let's say there's no constraint of money. Let's say you don't have to be on your phone to make your living. Um, you don't rely on your phone or on finances in any ways. What's the best case scenario lifestyle for the family that you envision for you guys?
The bare minimum 75% non-tablet, outside,
Yeah.
engaging with people and nature. Um, that's the ideal scenario.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
People, nature. That's a simple formula.
For sure.
You
Yeah.
know?
Especially, I think we are the generation who are more responsible for expressing our opinion around technology just because we've lived the time, part of our life, we lived without technology, without cell phones, and part of it with cell phones. We certainly recognize the usefulness and importance of having, a smart device near you that enhances your cognitive abilities. But at the same time, it's limiting you from connecting deeper to yourself, to others, to nature, and those who only grew up with cell phones or technology around them, they might be kind of blind to the fact that there's another aspect of life that doesn't have technology in it, and it might be even more enjoyable.
Yeah, so the difference between seeing technology in the phone as a tool versus as a way of life,
Mhm.
I think a lot of teenagers see it as a way of life. This is my life. Everything's happening in here.
Mhm.
When it's a tool, you use a tool for specific purposes, uh, right? I use the tool of Netflix and my TV for specific purposes, to relax and decompress and hang out with my wife and watch something interesting.
Mhm.
But it's a tool. It's not all encompassing, right? You pull it out in certain moments. Same thing with our phones, ideally.
Mhm.
And so it's establishing it as that tool and creating the right frameworks for it. That's really helpful to have structure, because otherwise, then it's just like, every person for themselves, and these technologies becoming ever more addictive, and it's
Mm-hmm.
with AI, it's learning about you and learning what your weak spots are and what draws you in, what your
Mm-hmm.
desires are,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be ever more alluring to be on it.
Yeah.
And so, how can we combat that? Well, it has to be it has to start with the family,
Yeah.
and the family needs to establish a culture around
Mm-hmm.
it. Without that, impossible, impossible. It's just
Mm-hmm.
the momentum around these technologies is too much, and the ubiquitousness, the amount of
Mm-hmm.
people using them is too grand
Mm-hmm.
to stop it. But if you have a culture in your family around this, and traditions, and ways of being around it, right, and conversations around it,
Yeah.
that's where you stand a chance
Mm-hmm.
to do that, right?
Mm-hmm. In your personal experience, what are some of the most useful ways of using technology that's been serving you greatly? Not just to connect to business leads or whatever, make money, but just useful in your life in general.
To connect to people,
Mm,
right? Texting, calling,
yeah,
keeping up with family, and it's an incredible source.
yeah.
I have family chats, I have friend chats,
Mm-hmm.
um, connection. When it's at its best, connection.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what this technology is best for. And connecting also to other cultures and other creatives. So that's what I love movies. I love shows because it connects me to amazing creative people creating amazing creative things,
Mm-hmm.
showing me incredible worlds that I wouldn't otherwise have access to.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So connection, it's all about connection for me.
For sure. And what's your take on AI and advancement, considering that this is the dumbest AI that we will ever have? Just taking it from that perspective, what's your take on this whole trend of artificial intelligence?
Inevitable.
Okay.
Inevitable. It is, no matter how much we like it or don't like it, it is here,
Yeah.
and it will continue to expand and ever be ever more in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So the question isn't whether we like it or not. It's, what can we do with it? How can we create opportunities from it? How can we make it a benefit? How can we make it work in our favor?
Yeah.
And so that's the interest of mine that I have with AI. There's a lot of opportunity, amazing opportunities with AI.
Right.
Right? It's like anything else. There's one side that can be super constructive and change the world for the best,
Yeah.
and the other side that it can destroy the world. We've
Right.
we've experienced that with other technologies before. This one's quite potent, certainly.
For sure.
But the opportunity to be able to diagnose and treat cancer
Mm-hmm.
proactively, the opportunity to heal things, and reveal blind spots that otherwise wouldn't. AI helping you to optimize your nutrition, optimize the exercise that's specific to you.
Mm-hmm.
All of that. There's just unending possibility on the
Mm-hmm.
positive side with AI. Same thing on the negative side. So
Mm-hmm.
again, a tool. How do we use it?
Yeah.
That's where we as a society need to be very intentional and be very aware of how we're navigating this together.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say is the top three things that worries you about what AI could potentially bring to us, things that we should be looking out for and making sure that AI doesn't, or the development of this field doesn't go into those directions? What would you say?
Number one, manipulation. Right? No matter what you think of yourself, any
Right.
one of us,
Right.
we are human beings that are easily manipulated if the right input is constantly in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so AI has the opportunity to learn what those inputs are and just go at it and go at it and evolve and get better.
Mm-hmm.
And so the opportunity to tear this society apart on that front that we're already starting to see inklings of today is there. Right. So that's the number one concern that I have.
Mm-hmm.
The opportunity for AI to create with the wrong person leading it,
Mm-hmm.
to create all sorts of destructive possibilities is there,
Yeah.
right? So teach me, how can I destroy the whole world? What is
Right.
the best mechanism for that?
Right. Right.
Off it goes, and it teaches you how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then on a smaller scale, any smaller player being able to do that to manipulate. Again, it goes back down to manipulation and destruction, those things. Psychological manipulation and actual destruction if it teaches you how to do that. So those are the concerns that I have.
So a common concern out there is that AI will take everyone's job. How do you think about inevitably AI, being able to do most current jobs in the future?
Yeah.
How do you look into that version of the future?
Yeah, one, I don't think a lot of people love their jobs, so that's not a horrible thing. That's first.
Right. I agree.
You're right. And the other thing is this is inevitable. This has always been inevitable. This is just this is what human evolution has been leading towards in so many ways, if one really sits and analyzes it. And so the question isn't what is it going to do for society? It's what are we as society going to do? How are we going to, where are we going to find our purpose, our sense of purpose? How are we going to fill our time? We have to define that for ourselves, but not everybody's in a position to define that for ourselves. So we have to also, as a collective, create avenues and spaces where individuals can feel like they're valuable, right? Like they have a sense of meaning and purpose, because that's really when we say not having a job, what will destroy humanity more than anything is people not having a sense of meaning and purpose and direction and where to hone their energy. Because if they don't have that, well, we see what happens. People turn to drugs and alcohol and, all sorts of destructive things. And so we need to help fill those gaps with AI. AI needs to help us figure it out.
Right. Figure problems. Yeah.
And give people that sense of meaning and purpose again.
Yeah. I mean, I think being in a coaching space, this theme of purpose and meaning is a big one for you.
Yeah.
Give maybe the listeners some advice, what worked for you or what you've seen others being effective for other people, how to find your purpose and how to find your meaning in life.
Yeah. It's hard to give a blanket statement because I stumbled into mine. It sort of emerged from pain and trauma, and just realizing that my own understanding of self and of life is one of the most important things I can dedicate myself to at the time, and then later seeing for the rest of my life, because so much stems from that. And so from there came, yes, I want to understand myself. I want to learn. I want to grow. And then once you do that, you start to realize, okay, now I'm learning and I'm growing and I'm realizing now I want to give back. I have a lot more to give. There was a lot that I navigated here that can benefit others. And so it turned into wanting to do something for others, right? And everything that I've built and started on the 3 companies that I've started have always had at its core to support others, to help others, to connect people to themselves, to life, to their family, to whatever, And so how do you find your meaning and your purpose? Well, you got to slow down, and you got to step away from all the inputs that you have in your life, from social media to family to friends, and really reflect. Books are a great avenue for that. So reading personal development books, whatever you might think of them, self-help books, whatever category you want to define, what it helps you to do is to, one, create a mental landscape of what's possible, words and language that you perhaps didn't know existed before, and you're reading about them and you're realizing, wow, okay, there is something called meaning and purpose, and wow, life doesn't have to be lived in just this certain way. And you start to sort of navigate through that process, what's true and not true for you. And so it's a process of exploration, right? So how do you find your meaning and your purpose? Embark on a journey of self-exploration. That starts with books, that continues with conversations with people, introspection in some sort of way, quiet spaces, whether that means meditation or going on walks or journaling, right? All of these things, and it's a process. You're not going to discover it tomorrow, right? Sometimes it's a lifelong journey where people are discovering it, in a sense. But the place where people get most tripped up, and my advice to people from the get-go is don't try to make your purpose your living,
Mm.
because that's where people get most tripped up. I don't know what my purpose is. What they're saying is, I don't know what the thing is that I can make money doing that I also love.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And those aren't necessarily the same things.
Right.
And so finding your purpose, let that be its own thing.
Mm.
Making money, let that be its own thing.
Mm.
If one day somehow they merge, wonderful.
Yes.
If they don't, that's fine. They're
Nice.
separate things.
Right.
Right. But when somebody tries to merge that, and I think there's a lot of input from, influencers and people in media, to find your purpose and do what you love and all
Yes.
those things. And I think that's led a lot of people astray.
Right.
And so separate those things.
Right. Right. I have this theory, again, I don't have necessarily data to back it up. Over time, the more opportunities in general we have, the more things that are happening, the more ways to make money are opening up, the more that statement is becoming true, that follow your purpose, basically coupling your purpose with making money. I don't think it's still available for everyone to right away figure out, okay, this is my set of skills, and this is, I'm going to be very successful in pursuing doing just that. Um, but I think over time, also, the more AI and other technologies is taking away the redundant jobs that do bring income to people, all that's left for humans to do is what they actually want to do. And I think that's going to be more valued, and people will be willing to pay for expression of self. Things like Patreon and other platforms similar to that is the first glimpses of people pursuing their purpose and doing exactly what they love and being able to get paid for it. But it's still a very early stages of that, and so speaking to what you've shared, I think it certainly could be misleading for a lot of people. They could follow this path and they just get lost just because there are no well tracks just yet to like figure it out. It's possible to figure out, but maybe not everyone in the position to maybe they have some blind spots or they don't have enough information from the perspective that they're in. They just don't see enough information to figure it out. I don't know.
Yeah. Or everybody becomes a coach and
Yeah, yeah,
that ends up being the end destination of someone trying to combine their work with their
yeah,
purpose. Which on
yeah.
the one hand, it's wonderful that we have so many people that are trained to support others. On the
Yeah.
other hand, it's not realistic to
Mm.
think that there is an economy where 75% of the population is a coach, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so that's where we have to take a step back and really see decouple those things and
Mm.
really see how we move forward. Because the other thing is, if money wasn't an obstacle for many people, the reality is people are going to, I don't know, drink, do drugs, get some sun, go to the beach until until they start feeling empty doing that, and they're going to
Right.
seek the next thing. And so there's going to be a lot of that too with this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
People are, maybe if there's universal basic income, some people, yeah, they're going to do art and creative things and support others and do all those
Mm-hmm.
things. There's going to be other people that are going to, sort of go in a more sort of self-indulgent, self-destructive path. But that's also the journey. It's hard to get to a place of understanding what's true for you if you don't try some of those things or all of those things
Yeah.
to their limit, so that
Mm-hmm.
you realize this is not the thing.
Right.
This is never going to give me happiness or satisfaction in and of
Mm-hmm.
itself.
Mm. Yeah, I just had this, as you were sharing, I had this vision where when jobs oftentimes get people in line, they're basically get them busy to not fall off like a legal boundary, let's say not do anything illegal or crazy. And when you remove the job thing where now they have the freedom to do whatever they want, there's a lot more bouncing that happens into the edges of the legal system. So probably, as you're saying, like a lot of people will probably end up doing drugs or doing some stupid things. That's like you remove the necessity of committing most of your life pursuing like a job that maybe you don't want to do, but it keeps you in line type thing. But once you remove that, then you start to wander all kinds of directions until over time, probably we will eventually the legal system will serve its function of keeping people contained within the limits, and people will pursue more of what's aligned with their purpose, maybe.
Yeah, and not just the legal part. I mean,
Mm,
if you take all sort of incentive
mm,
away and everybody's needs are being met,
mm-hmm.
the reason why people show up in a shitty job day after day is to provide a living for themselves and their family. And so, and that's what motivates them. They're there, great. I move through it. And if they don't have that, if their family's needs are taken care of, yeah, there's now open space. How do I fill it? What do I do?
Mm-hmm.
One can say, yeah, connect with my family, but then some people, there's just a lot. There's a lot that's going to be revealed about our psychology, the moment these things come, or as they come. Right, it's not going to be one day to the next. It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
sort of a gradual process, and so yeah, we as a whole, as a society, need to redefine what a human life looks like over 100 years, which is what our, human, the life expectancy is going to
Mm-hmm.
grow to. So, what
Mm-hmm.
does a human life look like? Because as it looked like for many, in the recent present, has been, the first 18 years you go to school, and then you go
Right.
off to college, and then you get a job, and then you start a family, and then you eventually retire from that job.
Right.
It's going to look different. School's going to look different.
Right.
School is going to look completely different. Is university going to exist? Is it going to be necessary? Is it going to be some sort of other combination?
Yeah, it's also interesting. We have kind of like stages of life. Yeah, there's like school, marriage, first kids, then work, and then retire, and then you're done. You're done. Uh, but then we're now also having technology of expanding your lifespan to, let's assume, I mean, it could easily be 150 to 200 years with just looking at the latest innovation in like the stem cell and other uh, like gene sequencing and all other techniques to prolong life. We're unlocking a new set of, let's say even 50 years. That's half of a modern life that wasn't there. Like, we don't know what it's so like we know approximately what a person in their 60s or 70s would be doing. They're in a subset of that category. We have no idea what people in their 130s would be. I mean, it's probably similar to at the end of life what people would be doing, but basically it gives you, and also removing all of the jobs, we're basically creating a completely new, unexpected set of experiences what humans will be doing um, for another 50 extra years.
Well, notice how in our generation, adolescence has extended
Mm,
much later.
right.
So people are having kids much later. Everything is kind of moving,
Shifted,
sort of
yeah.
shifting
Mm-hmm.
to be later and later. And so that's
True.
already starting to happen,
It's true. Yeah,
as a
exactly.
whole.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then the birth rates are going down probably for the same reason. Or, I mean, following the same trend of us living longer, and so we don't need to give birth to so many children anymore. Usually, the countries, or even in history, the times that would produce the most amount of upbringing kids, there are tough times where the mortality rates are higher, so you have to like produce a lot more.
Right.
And so the lower the mortality rate, the less kids you to keep around, like
Yeah.
to produce. Yeah.
And so whoever has gotten to this point and listening, thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate you being here with us. And, you know, the the only thing that we can actually do, because one can get overwhelmed with everything that's coming our way and what to do, and oh my God, how do
Mhm.
we control? Right, how do we
Yeah.
control this? How do we fix it? How do we change it? All we can control and fix is ourselves, and that's my ultimate belief: is that all change, all everything that we're seeking starts with our own self, right? So waking up ourselves and healing the things that need healing.
Mhm.
We have to do the work ourselves, spread that to the people around us, and then let that be the ripple that
Mhm.
changes our world and our society and the industries and the everything that we're moving into. it's difficult, if not impossible, to change society, right?
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe in some some few final notes, what excites you currently? What are some things that really uh, give you some extra spark of excitement?
Everything. I feel
Yeah.
like I'm just getting started
All
in
right.
so many
Amazing.
ways. I feel like I'm just like at the beginning of new everything. So, having growing my family, growing the businesses that I'm involved in, uh, those are the things that occupy most of my time and energy, and then deepening all the relationships that are in my life.
Hmm.
I'm surrounded by amazing people. I'm blessed with incredible friends. Um, Supportive family, and so just deepening those relationships while growing, the things that I'm working on. So
Hmm.
so much excites me.
Hmm.
And then I'm somebody also who I want I expect to live to 150, and I'm excited no matter what the unfolding is
Hmm.
to experience what that unfolding is. I'm so curious. I want to see it. I want to
Totally.
experience it. I want to be involved in it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, however it turns, I'm going to
Yeah.
be there.
Totally. And
I hope.
do you think you'll have a chance to go to Mars?
Possibly. Possibly. I definitely I'll be in outer space in my lifetime. I mean, that's
Yeah,
my assumption.
for sure.
If all
Exactly.
goes well and I stay alive, yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, it
Yeah.
sounds like it's pretty soon. Regular humans with regular budgets will be able to
Yeah.
just go to space.
Yeah, and that's gonna be a mind-blowing experience. I cannot wait for that. To
Same.
be in 0 G and then looking at Earth, and my God,
Hmm.
that's awesome to me.
You know, it's a little fun fact. The level of gravity at the level where, let's say, the International Space Station is flying is 90 something 8 or 6% the same as it is on the Earth. It's perceived that is zero gravity space, but the reason why that's happening is because the the International Space Station or any other satellites on the orbit, they're in a free fall. Basically, since the Earth is round, you flying forward so quickly that you're constantly falling, and you're missing it consistently just because your speed is just right to never fall back. It's like going so fast parallel to the Earth that it's constantly falling.
Mind blown.
Yeah. So if it stops, it goes straight down. It just goes as fast as just a regular ball just going down like that.
The rotation stops, meaning it'll go down to Earth. The gravity of Earth, the gravitational pull of Earth will pull it down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you build a tower as tall as the space of the space station, you put yourself on the scale, you would be about the same weight, like 90 something percent
Wow.
of the same weight, which
Wow.
is most people have no idea that that's what it is.
No?
But that the reason why it's possible is because there's no friction and you can just fly with no additional energy to you just get yourself to the orbit and then you're just cruising. I mean, they need to do minor adjustments, but
You
yeah,
learn something new every day. That's
yeah,
incredible.
yeah. That's how like the satellites
That's
work.
unbelievable.
At some point, I was just geeking out, and I also not that's where I've learned about it, but I was just obsessed about the whole satellite communication, satellites, and I've read like the entire textbook on like satellite communication, and was just curious about the whole
Just like
thing.
every other person, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brother, this has been an honor to have you in the space. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your insights, and a little bit of yourself in this format. Is there anything else you would like to share with the audience? Maybe the ways to find you, or something maybe some of the nonprofit that you're part of that you want people to maybe bring awareness
Sure.
into. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank
Yeah.
you. I love this space, and it's awesome chatting with you always. Relay for Life is the organization I'm a part of. It's if you're located in Miami, it's happening June 1st in Fairchild Tropical Garden, and it's the largest fundraiser for the American Cancer Society. It basically that money goes to research and to supporting cancer patients, survivors, etc. So check it out. You can find me. I'm sure there's links somewhere down below or somewhere, and you
Mm.
can check me out. Jonathan Hermida _ is my Instagram. And if you Google Jonathan Hermida, you'll find a few resources related to me. So
Awesome, brother. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.